Huge show coming up today. Brand new polling show that Generation Z, well, they don't actually like babies, but they do kind of like socialism. We will explain. Plus, Democrats continue to double down on protecting criminals and illegal immigrants. Not a smart move. But first, whatever plans you have tomorrow night, you should cancel them because we need you here with all of us to celebrate a decade of the Daily Wire with the live premiere episode of our new show, Friendly Fire, at 7 p.m. Eastern. We're not gathering to tell stories of the past. This isn't a nostalgia hour. There will be a little nostalgia. Instead, we're giving you a first look at what's coming next. New series, new projects, huge announcements, surprises we have been holding back until this very moment. This is the start of our next decade. You don't want to miss a single moment. It is the live debut episode of Friendly Fire. All of us will be together to do what friends do. Argue, debate. Michael will probably smoke a few Mayflower cigars. I'm going to make fun of him like a lot. Watch live tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern at dailywire.com and on the Daily Wire Plus app. Well, folks, the kids are not okay. We now have an enormous amount of poll data suggesting that Generation Z has some very serious problems. And those are problems that they didn't create for themselves. These are problems created by, honestly, generations of bad parenting in the United States of America. There are brand new poll numbers out from NBC News. And what it shows is basically young people not into getting married or having babies, also kind of like socialism. This is not good. It is incredibly not good. So according to this NBC News poll, results among respondents aged 18 to 29. They were asked about 13 different options of top priorities. And this is overall, and we'll get to sort of the political divisions in a moment, which show the difference between Trump's America and Kamala Harris's America. But overall, people 18 to 29, for women, the number one priority in life was having a job or career you find fulfilling. Number two, having enough money to do the things you want to do. 3, achieving financial independence. 4, having emotional stability. And then if you go all the way down the list, number 10, having children. Number 11, being married. That's a problem. That is a massive problem. If young women between the ages of 18 and 29 believe that it is a 10th priority to have kids and an 11th priority to get married, and their number one priority is having a job or a career, that is a gigantic mistake when it comes to the purpose of life. How about for men? So for men, they agree. Number 1, having a job or career you find fulfilling. And number 2, they also agree with women, having enough money to do the things you want to do. You have to go all the way down to number 7 to get to being married. And number 8, having children. Again, massive, massive problem. Any society that does not make its number 1 focus, not number 2, not number 3, number 1, getting married and having kids, is a society that is doomed to failure. Because that is, in fact, the priority of any society. You cannot pass your values on to the next generation if there is no next generation. Also, you can't pass your values on to the next generation if you have no values. And the reality is that central purpose in life comes from the book of Genesis, leaving your father and mother, marrying a member of the opposite sex, and having kids. And that's not just because it's in the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis has lasted ages immemorial, specifically because that happens to be true. Any society that believes that earning for, I suppose, individualistic pursuits, because literally the number 2 priority here is having enough money to do the things you want to do. Any society that is focused on hedonistic personal fulfillment is a society that is doomed to failure. People will stop having kids. People will stop getting married. People will not be happy. And then when they are not happy, because it turns out that the fruits of economics are not enough to make you happy, they turn on the economics themselves. Because you cannot fill that family-shaped hole in the heart with cash. It is not possible to do it. You can't. The thing that gives fulfillment in life to human beings is getting married and having kids. And I know that in our radically individualistic society, we're supposed to believe that all forms of familial formation, that all forms of sexual behavior are equally admirable and equally the target of aspiration for society. That is wrong and untrue. We should be teaching our kids that it is important to marry a member of the opposite sex and have kids with those people. Now, will there be people for whom this doesn't apply? Sure, because for every rule there are exceptions. But if that is not the societal aspiration, what you end up with is people who are inward focused, because the thing that chiefly takes you out of your own emotional narcissism is getting married and having children. I talk about this in the book, in Lions and Scavengers. I talk about this, but the word in Hebrew for love is ahava. The root of the word ahava is hav, to give. And it is that giving that is at the root of love. If you have no one to give yourself to, if you do not have, as it says in the Bible, ezer kenegdo, right? Meaning a helpmeet is the way it's usually translated, but that's not what it means. Okay, when it says that God is going to create for Adam a helpmate, or helpmeet, ezer kenegdo is the term that is used in Hebrew. What that literally means is a helper against him. The point is that a woman completes a man and a man completes a woman. And yes, they do need each other. And that is not a bad thing. That is quite a beautiful thing. And when they come together, they have children. And that is the most beautiful thing. And any society that vitiates that purpose and treats that purpose as not only secondary or tertiary, but 10th on the list of priorities is a society that is not only doomed not to have kids, it is a society that is doomed for unhappiness. And then when that unhappiness materializes, people blame the economic system. Okay, these two things are connected. There's polling data, as we'll get to in a moment, showing that young people particularly are warming towards socialism. Why? The answer is, if you can't get what you want in the form of economics, then you tend to blame the economic system. And it used to be that so long as you were able to earn for your family, that was the purpose of earning, to earn for your family, to be able to buy a house for your family, not just for you, for your family, to provide a better life for your kids. If you separate off family and kids from that purpose, no amount of money that you earn will ever be enough to have enough money to do the things you want to do, because there are always new things that you want to do. That is something that Adam Smith, the great proponent of capitalism, talked about. There are always new things you want to do with your money. That is not where fulfillment is found. And now, there is a political valence to all of this, as pointed out by Steve Kornacki. So, according to the NBC News Decision Desk poll about Generation Z, and again, I don't blame young people for this, I blame their parents. Parents did not hand down the values that they were taught by their parents to their kids. We now have 3 generations in American life that have degraded the value of family and childbearing and rearing in favor of atomistic individualism that was supposed to provide a sort of libertine fulfillment. And you know what? It's just empty. It's just empty, and people are unhappy, particularly women, by the way, because while men, it is their responsibility to be fathers and have babies, the reality of the world is that it is women, traditionally speaking, and yes, naturally speaking, biologically speaking, who long to have children. This pretend, nonsense, made-up world in which women are taught that they ought not want to have children is unnatural. Like in the purest biological sense, it is unnatural. There's a reason why every study of rhesus monkeys shows that female rhesus monkeys, if you give them a truck, will literally take the truck and start cradling the truck. And male rhesus monkeys, if you give them a baby, the male rhesus monkeys will start hitting each other with it. Men and women, different. When you tell women they don't want the thing that they absolutely do want, what you end up with is unhappy women. And when men can't fulfill their highest purpose, because many women don't want to fulfill that purpose either, they get angry at women and they become counterproductive and bad citizens of society. So here's how this breaks down politically, and it is fascinating. As I mentioned, Steve Kornacki points this out. Among men who voted for President Trump, the number one priority, and it's still not high enough, but the number one priority is having children, 34%. Number 2 is financial independence. Number 3 is fulfilling job and career. And number 4 is being married. Last on the list, tied for last, able to retire early and having emotional stability. And that's not because people don't want emotional stability. It's because that's not typically the way that men think. As a man, I tell you, we don't walk around thinking, man, am I emotionally stable today? How am I feeling emotionally? That is just a non-masculine attitude toward the world as a general rule. Already coming up, we'll get more into the polling data showing that Generation Z has a major, major problem. Plus, we'll get into Democrats defending crime and illegal immigration and transgender dancers at the VA. There's a lot happening. Anyway, when was the last time you bragged about your wireless company? Like, did you know my wireless company gave away 1,000 American flags to deserving vets and forgave $10 million in veteran debt? Did you know my wireless company raised almost $500,000 to prevent veteran suicide? Well, when your wireless company is Pure Talk, there's a lot to brag about. You can even brag about the coverage you get with Pure Talk, a 5G network that is insanely fast, dependable, and secure. And you can brag about how much money you save with Pure Talk. Unlimited talk, text, and 15 gigs of high-speed data is just $35 a month with mobile hotspot. Now, the reality is I'm using Pure Talk every single day. I take my calls pretty dang seriously. I know you do too. And so you need a great tower network, like Pure Talk has. You need that clear coverage. You need a great price. and a company that actually shares your values. It's time to switch to my wireless company, Pure Talk. But if you need another reason, something you can really brag about, Pure Talk is the only wireless company that actually gives you a 1-year free membership to Daily Wire Plus when you go to puretalk.com/Shapiro. Again, choose a qualifying plan at puretalk.com/Shapiro. Relish your free 1-year membership to Daily Wire Plus. Pure Talk, wireless, worth bragging about. Also, when we first started Daily Wire, felt like we had to figure everything out with minimal help. The editorial guidelines, studio setup, production schedule, branding. All that was really overwhelming. Lots of decisions necessary every single day. Finding the one tool that simplifies everything when starting a business becomes a game changer and a lifesaver for millions of businesses. That tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the United States. We even use it for our own Daily Wire shop to make sure things are running smoothly and efficiently so you can get all the goods. You might be asking, what if I can't design a website or I'm worried people haven't heard of my brand? Not a problem. Shopify's got you covered from the start with beautiful, ready-to-go templates that match your brand's style and helps you find your customers through easy-to-run email and social media campaigns. And if you need a hand with everyday tasks, their AI tools created specifically for commerce can help enhance product images, write descriptions, and more. Plus, their award-winning customer support is available 24/7 to share advice if you ever get stuck. Turn those dreams into and give them the best shot at success with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial. Start selling today at shopify.com/Shapiro. Go to shopify.com/Shapiro. That's shopify.com/Shapiro. Okay, now contrast men who voted for Trump with men who voted for Harris. 54% of men who voted for Kamala Harris say their number one priority is fulfilling job or career. 42% say that it's a priority for them to have money to do the things that they want. Being married, 11%. Having children, 9%. So men who voted for Kamala Harris don't care about getting married. They don't care about having kids. This is mirrored by women who voted for Kamala Harris. So women who voted for Kamala Harris, 51% said it was a priority to have a fulfilling job or career. 46% said it was a priority to have money to do the things they want to do. 39% said having emotional stability, which, again, emotional stability is a byproduct of purpose in the world. Emotional stability is not something you get by going to your therapist. The way that emotional stability is actually materialized in the world, realized in the world, is by doing duty-bound things every day that make the world better, make your family better, make your community better. That is where mental health lives. Mental health lives in getting off your ass and stopping with the navel gazing and going and doing something productive with your day, something that is meaningful in the world, performing a duty, helping your community, building social. Those are the things that make you emotionally stable. If you just have a goal of emotional stability, you're going to be tilting at windmills out there because no drug is going to provide you emotional stability in the deepest and truest sense. And neither is any amount of therapy. The best those can do is act as palliatives against your depression, but they cannot actually solve your underlying malaise. A purpose-filled life, a meaning-filled life is the best counteractive to that malaise. Okay, so again, women who voted for Kamala Harris, literally last on the list, last, is being married and having kids. Only 6% of women who voted for Kamala Harris said that it was important to a successful life to be married or have kids. That is simply the result of generations of propaganda directed at liberal women. That's all. That's all. Because convincing women that their magical superpower, which is to be able to actually grow another human in them and then to nurse that human toward maturity, and saying to women that actually that's the last thing that you're about. That's the last. No, it actively is not. It truly, fundamentally is not. And when you alienate women from the thing that is their magical superpower, and you tell them that's the thing they shouldn't want, what they actually should want is to be more like the men working 2,200 billable hours at a law firm. What you're going to end up with is an enormous amount of unhappiness on both the part of women who have now been alienated from a central purpose in life, the central purpose of life, and men who actively would like to form families with women and then fulfill their central purpose in life. Okay, how about women who voted for Trump? So amazingly, even for women who voted for Trump, and again, I think that a lot of this is just the result of a feminist movement that has degraded childbearing and rearing, truly degraded it. Even women who voted for Trump put getting married and having kids lower on their priority list. Their number one, in terms of having a fulfilling life, is financial independence. Number two is fulfilling job and career. Number three is owning their own home. Only 26% say having children. Only 20% say being married. This is a failure. It is a gigantic societal failure, a massive societal failure. And it is not unconnected with our broken politics. Because if you find fulfillment in your family, in your home, in your community, you're significantly less likely to then start searching for shadowy reasons why you're unfulfilled, blaming, quote unquote, the systems for your personal lack of fulfillment. For the fact that, yeah, you got that job at the law firm and you're working 2,200 billable hours and you're making a really good, solid living and you're still unhappy. And so what you do is you start blaming the systems that have created more prosperity than any system in human history, free market capitalism. These two things are not disconnected in any way, shape, or form. So there's another poll that is out from Gallup. Do you have a positive or negative view of socialism? Positive, 39%, negative, 57%. Okay, fine. So the views of capitalism are down. Right now, capitalism only has a 54% approval rating as opposed to 42% negative rating. And that is really low. And frankly, that's because people simply do not understand that their wealth, their prosperity, and their freedom are reliant on a private property system in which you are freely able to alienate your labor. That's all. People don't understand free markets because they don't take the time to understand free markets. People have a general belief that prosperity is the natural state of the world and that anything that strays from that natural state is the system. That there's some sort of Edenic paradise where you could pick fruit off the tree and everything grew wild and you were rich. And then capitalism intervened, this sort of Rousseauian view of the state of nature, which is total trash, not true at all, either factually or theoretically, just stupidity. Okay, but fair enough, Americans like capitalism more than socialism, but you get to the younger generation and things start to go pretty haywire. Ages 18 to 34, 49% of Americans, 18 to 34, are positive about socialism. 46% are negative about socialism. How about capitalism? Age 18 to 34, same poll. 43% positive about capitalism, 54% negative about capitalism. These two things are not unassociated. If you go looking for meaning in all the wrong places, you are likely to not find meaning. You are likely to find grievance and anger and rage at the system. The Marxist materialist view of the world, which is that happiness is simply a result of material prosperity or material distribution, and that you are generated by your economic system, is a lie. It is not true, and it can't be solved. The problems with the human heart cannot be solved by the government cutting you a check or by the government taking money from Elon Musk and handing it to you. It doesn't solve the problem. Now, what this really does do is it puts free market capitalism on extraordinarily shoddy footing. Why? Because in any system that has a vibrant social fabric where you have healthy families and healthy kids and healthy communities and healthy churches, the economy is going to go up, the economy is going to go down, but the root of your happiness lies in that relationship with your family and with your community, and yes, with your country. In a society where all those bonds are broken, you end up relying on material prosperity as the thing that is going to buy you happiness. And so if the economy goes down, you wish to wreck the entire system. Right? If there's some sort of economic depression, you end up with a massive political crisis in which all of the actual machinery that provides all of the prosperity upon which the entire social welfare state relies. Because social welfare states do not function in nationalized economy countries. They don't. Because they don't generate enough prosperity. Basically, social welfare systems are the weight that gets to live atop the foundation of actual free market capitalism and commerce and trade and innovation and risk-taking and all the rest, and the creative, destructive process that is free market capitalism. That's what generates all the wealth. Ain't no socialist program ever generated wealth. All socialist programs can do is try to redistribute the wealth, and typically that also means, over time, quashing innovation, destroying risk-taking, and making the general economy significantly worse. But if you are looking at your life situation, and you basically, your philosophy is now, if line go up and to the right, happy, if line go down and to the right, sad, then if the line goes down and to the right, and you find your meaning somewhere else, outside of church or family or having kids, the only thing you care about is your job. That's like your biggest thing. And then you lose your job. What do you do? What do you feel about the system? You start to blame capitalism in general, and you start hoping for a great savior, a great socialist savior from the sky who is going to descend Zohar Mamdani-like and fix all of your problems. And that's when free market capitalism really is in trouble. And if free market capitalism dies, so do millions of people. That is the history of communism. That is the history of socialism. This is why I've been saying, and I will continue to say, the single greatest risk to the Trump era is a sinking economy. It is why good economic policy is really, really, really important because we are now living in an extraordinarily high-risk era, a truly high-risk era. It used to be that economies could survive vicissitudes. Free market capitalism could survive vicissitudes because, again, people didn't find their chief level of meaning in the economy. The economy mattered an awful lot. It will always matter an awful lot. Of course, material prosperity and conditions matter. But the way that you found your personal meaning in life when you got up in the morning was your wife or your husband and your kids and your church and your community. And as that's gone away, as that's been exploded over the course of the last 60, 70 years in this country, what you end up with is line go down and to the right. I hate the system. Let's tear it all down. Bernie Sanders or one of his acolytes ought to run the country. And that's why that line better keep going up and to the right. So the Trump administration has now apparently released a report, or is going to release a report, laying out alleged shortcomings of the Bureau of Labor Statistics jobs data. This is according to the Wall Street Journal. The report takes a critical look at the BLS and lays out a historical overview of the agency's jobs data revision. This, of course, comes amid President Trump's move to fire the BLS Commissioner Erica McIntyre. He's now nominated longtime BLS critic E.J. Antoni to run the agency. So here is the rule. The last couple of labor reports have been extremely weak. Hiring seems to be slowing or even in decline in the United States because of all of the uncertainty surrounding things like tariffs, surrounding AI, surrounding interest rates, and all the rest. Well, if you are arguing with the ref, the rule goes in sports, you are losing. If you're arguing with the BLS, you're losing. Presidents who are presiding over growing, healthy, burgeoning economies are not arguing with BLS. They're just not wasting their time there. That doesn't mean that Trump is wrong about BLS or the stats. He may very well be right. But the idea that basically, if you jerry-rig a new system of numbers, that really is just a problem in the measurement technique. That's not what people feel. It's not what people feel. Meanwhile, according to the Wall Street Journal, falling lumber prices are sounding an alarm on Wall Street about potential problems on Main Street. Wood markets have been whipsawed of late by trade uncertainty and a deteriorating housing market. Futures have dropped 24% since hitting a 3-year high at the beginning of August and ended Monday at 526.50 per 1,000 feet of board. That price drop might have been greater, but two of America's biggest sawyers said last week that they would curtail output, slowing the decline. Well, the crashing wood prices are troubling because they're an indicator that there is a slowing housing market as well as slowing in the broader economic activity. This is a problem. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, has been deployed to virtually all of the Sunday shows in order to promote the economy, suggesting that things are strong and growing. And he is, in fact, very competent. But the whipsawing around tariffs, the bizarre sort of statism implicit in taking stakes and ownership in particular companies, sponsorship of particular ownership in companies, none of that is likely to lead to short, mid, or even real long-term growth. It just isn't. And so the question becomes, if you screw around with the free market, and this is the history of the anti-free market movement in the United States, typically what happens is the free market works pretty well. And every so often there's a crash. And typically the free market does a pretty good job of getting us out of a crash. Go look up the non-existent depression of the 1920s. There was a vast stock market crash in 1920-21, and it healed within months because the government basically stayed out of it. Unlike 1929, when after the stock market crash, we got the most interventionist public policy from both the Hoover and FDR administrations in American history by far. Or the gigantic failed recovery of Barack Obama, the slowest economic recovery in American history because of his vast statism and government interventionism. But the history of America's feelings about capitalism is if there is a crash, and if the government is responsible for that crash, and then if the government gets very involved, capitalism gets blamed. That is a problem. The economy must continue to move forward on solid footing. Otherwise, the socialists are waiting. They are. And what they are waiting for is something really, really, really bad. The Bernie Sanders movement is waiting in the wings. I know that everybody on the right, that we are all very optimistic. I know Donald Trump won the last election. Republicans have been pretty effective in getting through vast policy priorities. And that's wonderful. But things reverse quite quickly in this country, particularly upon economic stagnation. And so I would just warn everybody, don't get high on your own supply. The reality is that things can change very quickly. And being foolish about policy out of a sort of misplaced optimism that the left will never recover ignores the history of all American electoral politics literally ever. Okay, and that doesn't mean that the left can't find a way to blow it. They certainly can. And right now, the momentum is certainly with the right. But with that said, the economy is pretty much everything right now, the Trump economy. Already coming up, Democrats continue to defend criminals and illegal immigrants led by people like Zohran Mamdani. Again, they want to make this guy the hero of the story, and he absolutely is the villain. First, I used to think grocery shopping was simple, and then I learned that over 4 billion pounds of meat was imported into the U.S. last year and can still be labeled as product of the USA, which is weird. If labels can be misleading about something as basic as where your meat comes from, what else don't you know about the meat that you're buying? And this is why Good Ranchers is taking over the game with quality meat you can trust, all born and raised right here on American soil. So our staff is constantly eating the Good Ranchers. In fact, the kids of our staff really eating the Good Ranchers. I've mentioned producer Savvy's child. When I say child, I say it advisedly. That kid is as big as I am, and the kid's like 3 because of Good Ranchers. 100% American meat, locally sourced from American family farms and ranches, delivered straight to your door. Right now, you can get $40 off plus free meat for life when you subscribe with my code BEN. That is BEN for $40 off and free meat for life. GoodRanchers.com. Welcome to the table. Get yourself some good old American meat right now at Good Ranchers. Go check them out right now. It's GoodRanchers.com. Also, I always assumed restless sleep was inevitable, night after night, tossing, turning, waking up with that bad back. You know, you kind of think that's how sleep is supposed to be until you get a mattress made just for you, which is what I did with Helix Sleep, which has made my sleep quality a lot better. Gotta tell you, I really miss it when I am on the road as much as I have been lately. I fall asleep at home easily in minutes, even when there's a lot going on. What makes Helix different? They don't just sell you a random mattress. They actually match you with the perfect one for your body and sleep style. Whether you're a side sleeper, a back sleeper, or somewhere in between, they've got you covered. They make it so simple to get your best night's sleep every single night. All you have to do is take their sleep quiz, get matched with a custom mattress based on your body type and sleep preferences. Trust me, when you find the right match, you'll wonder how you ever slept on anything else. Again, I've got that firm but breathable mattress. Makes my life a lot better. Makes my back better. I sleep better. Right now, Helix is offering an incredible Labor Day extended sale. Visit helixsleep.com/Ben. Get 25% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com/Ben for 25% off site-wide. Make sure you enter our show name after checkout so they know we sent you. Again, just visit helixsleep.com/Ben for this exclusive offer. All right, meanwhile, speaking of the left blowing it, the left continues to take a bizarre perspective when it comes to crime. Absolutely non-understandable unless you understand that for the hard radical left, crime is merely symptomatic of America's supposed racism. And so anybody who commits a crime really is a victim of the system. And anybody who's a victim of the victim is an unfortunate byproduct of the system as well. So if you go a couple layers deep, it turns out that it's Thomas Jefferson's fault that a deranged homeless man who is black stabbed an innocent Ukrainian woman on a light train in Charlotte. That seems to be the leftist case. This is why you hear dumb comments like, we can't incarcerate our way out of this. No, absolutely we can incarcerate our way out of crime. Actually, there's a very long history of people incarcerating their way out of crime. See, when people commit crimes and you put them in jail, you know what they can't do? Commit crimes against people again on the streets because they're in jail. In any case, we now have new details about the murder suspect in this horrifying case in which a young Ukrainian refugee was murdered in cold blood, sitting there. According to the New York Post, the deranged homeless man charged with butchering a 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee on a Charlotte train was free on cashless bail after a magistrate released him with just a written promise to show up for court, despite a nearly 2-decade history of violence and mental illness. And only public policy insanity can be to blame for this. I mean, insanity is actually a way of getting people off the hook. It actually is public policy evil. If you are giving cashless bail to people who are violent schizophrenics and letting them off onto the street, that is not an act of insanity. That is an act of ideological evil, truly. That is evil. Freeing violent criminals onto the streets out of a misplaced sympathy for them is cruelty to the innocent. The suspect in this case, DeCarlos Brown, was arrested at least 14 times in North Carolina for crimes ranging from assault and firearms possession to felony robbery and larceny dating back to 2007. His own mother told a local TV station her son was schizophrenic and should never have been allowed to roam the streets. But Brown was a free man right up until the moment the cops said he viciously stabbed Irina Zarutska in an unprovoked and cowardly sneak attack as she rode the train home from her job at the local pizzeria. Again, the system failed Zarutska at every turn. The killing has exposed major safety flaws on Charlotte's mass transit system. Apparently, Brown was a fare beater. He took both the bus and the Lynch Blue Line train without ever paying a cent. So again, even a basic sort of broken windows theory, a turnstile policy, would have stopped this from happening. It turns out local cops don't even police the Charlotte area transit system. Instead, everything was outsourced to professional security services since last December. Again, this is truly ridiculous. The mayor of Charlotte, a person named Vi Lyles, issued a tone-deaf statement demanding compassion for people with mental illness. And then put out a statement, quote, "As I reflect on the tragic murder of Irina Zarutska, my heart continues to go out to her family and our community as we try to make sense of this horrific and senseless loss. This is a tragic failure by the courts and magistrates. Our police officers arrest people only to have them quickly released, which undermines our ability to protect our community and ensure safety. We need a bipartisan solution to address repeat offenders who do not face consequences for their actions and those who cannot get their treatment for mental illness and are allowed to be on the streets." That is true. I'm glad that you got it on second try, Mayor. Again, Magistrate Judge Teresa Stokes released him with a written promise to appear for his next court date. The guy couldn't even promise to take his drugs for his schizophrenia. Totally ridiculous. President Trump yesterday issued a statement giving his love to the family of the young woman who was stabbed to death.
I just give my love and hope to the family of the young woman who was stabbed this morning or last night in Charlotte by a madman, a lunatic. Just got up and started. It's right on the tape. It's not really watchable because it's so horrible, but just viciously stabbed. She's just sitting there. So they're evil people. We have to be able to handle that. If we don't handle that, we don't have a country.
President Trump then put out a statement on Truth Social as well, pointing out that it's Democratic crime policy that leads to horrific circumstances like this. Quote, "I've seen the horrific video of a beautiful young Ukrainian refugee who came to America to escape the vicious war in Ukraine and was innocently riding the metro in Charlotte, North Carolina, where she was brutally ambushed by a mentally deranged lunatic. The perpetrator was a well-known career criminal who had been previously arrested and released on cashless bail in January a total of 14 times. What the hell was he doing riding the train and walking the streets? Criminals like this need to be locked up. The blood of this innocent woman can literally be seen dripping from the killer's knife, and now her blood is on the hands of the Democrats who refuse to put bad people in jail, including former disgraced governor and wannabe Senator Roy Cooper. North Carolina and every state needs law and order, and only Republicans will deliver it. Additionally, where's the outrage from the mainstream media on this horrible tragedy? Vote for Michael Whatley for United States Senate. He won't let this happen again." Well, you might think that President Trump is speaking hyperbolically here. There's only one problem. He absolutely is not. Zohran Mamdani wants to be mayor of New York. And if the polls are any sort of guide, then he will be the next mayor of New York, mainly because young people, Generation Z people in New York, appear to have some sort of mental deficiency. Zohran Mamdani recently said that his goal is to reduce the jail population. Yes, great idea, because people in jail are famous for not being criminals. Oh, wait, they're in prison for a reason. Again, this is not a call for everybody who smokes a joint to go to jail, obviously. But the basic idea that there are too many people in prison, as opposed to too many people walking the streets who are criminals and doing crime, is silly. Here is Zohran Mamdani being just a terrible human being, because that's effectively what he is.
The jail population of Rikers has increased since Eric Adams has come into office by more than 1,000 additional incarcerated New Yorkers. And what is quite staggering to me is that we know that we can reduce that jail population to less than 4,000. I mean, Vital City had an article about a number of different proposals that could reduce it to 3,700. And some of this also just has to look at the average stay on Rikers in the 90s was 50 days. Now it's more than 100. There are more than 1,500 people on Rikers who have been held there for more than a year. So I do think many of the reforms that have to be made are also reforms around the court system.
Well, I mean, obviously the top priority for New Yorkers is making sure that more criminals get out of Rikers early. Not just that, Mamdani also says he would like to abolish the gang database. So basically, he's just going to allow every criminal in New York City to roam free. Congrats to you, New Yorkers. I mean, you break it, you bought it, gang. You are fulfilling the H.L. Mencken statement that democracy is the theory that the people should get what they want good and hard. Get ready, because you're going to get it good and hard from Zohran Mamdani.
Let me ask you about a bunch of different policies just to kind of get your thinking out there. If city council legislation to abolish the NYPD gang database were to pass, would you support and sign that?
I have supported that proposal. It's one that I've supported because of the vast dragnet has meant the inclusion of New Yorkers on the basis of whether they go out late, photos they put on social media, so much of the facts of life of being a young New Yorker, and yet it then becomes a mark of suspicion. And it is a concern of mine that we do not live up to, of all people, Eric Adams's words in 2021, who said that New Yorkers need not choose between safety and justice. Mm-hmm. There's no question that we have to take gangs extremely seriously. And yet I find that a database that includes New Yorkers on such bases is one that doesn't actually do exactly that.
So we need to take gang violence seriously, but we also need to destroy the gang database. He has no replacement for it, by the way. He doesn't care. Again, the goal of scavengers like Zoran Mamdani, and that dude is a scavenger. He has not produced a single thing of value his entire life, literally his entire life. He has lived high on the American hog since he arrived in this country with his extremely well-educated and wealthy parents, who, by the way, were subsidized by the government of Qatar. And here he is now telling Americans that they ought to be subjected to criminals on the streets of New York because, you know, he has vague standards about who should and should not be in the gang database. And then you wonder why most Americans are perfectly fine with President Trump trying to use the National Guard to quash crime, just on a political level. Democrats wrong-footing themselves all over the place on this stuff. It really is amazing. Rahm Emanuel, who's trying to pose himself as sort of the rational Democratic alternative to Mamdaniism, he says that when President Trump says that he's going to send the National Guard to Chicago, it's performative violence. Well, you know it's not performative violence. Actual violence in the city of Chicago, former Mayor Rahm Emanuel.
This is a president who's doing performative violence on a city, violence on its residents, driving a wedge without the effort to actually stop this senseless gun violence. And he would have a welcome hand from every city, of every mayor, of every political stripe, of every size city, if he would partner rather than cut the funding for police, rather than cut the funding that helps us dealing with carjacking. So I just think that you see it what it is. It's performative. It's a distraction from the failed economic policies of Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, what a failure by Democrats. What they should be saying is, sure, well, we would love help from the National Guard. And also, here are the other things that we would love to help decrease crime from the federal level. Like all of those things and the above. And that's the thing they should be doing. But again, they are too wedded to the idea that everything Donald Trump does is wrong, and therefore they must do the opposite. Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, he was asked by a reporter about crime, and he basically just tried to blow it off.
Why is it that Democrats don't want to hold that particular Capitol Hill police officer with any sort of accountability, yet as far as the cities in which the states that you're from, you don't want to deal with the crime that's actually going on in your own states? And Mr. Raskin, you're
Is there
laughing.
a question there?
No, Mr. Raskin, you're laughing, but a woman was just killed in your state, and you don't want to address that either.
Yeah, I'm not going to address the ad hominem foolishness that was just articulated. But what I will say very clearly is that we have, as Democrats, been very clear that we're going to support local law enforcement, which includes law enforcement on January 6th, the NYPD, the Chicago Police Department, the Metropolitan Police Department, and do what is necessary to help them do their jobs.
Well, actually, that is not what you have said. That has not been your consistent position. I mean, I'm old enough to remember Nancy Pelosi kneeling in kente cloth to protest the evils of police and the consent decrees rammed down by the Biden administration in the aftermath of George Floyd mania, and by the Obama administration in the aftermath of Ferguson and Trayvon Martin, attempting to prevent police from actually doing their jobs. And again, these are the people that the Democrats choose to elevate. Jasmine Crockett, she decided to take off her fake accent and put on her normal voice to talk about Republicans and their anti-small government beliefs with regard to law enforcement.
It is so rich that the Republicans believe in small government, and this is the biggest government that I've ever seen, because they have decided that now they are going to somehow be the local police that is going to solve local crime as the federal level. That is not what we're supposed to do, especially on our level. What we do is we write federal laws. That is our job, and that is the lane that we're going to stay in. And the only reason we're talking about January 6th is because the Republicans are the ones bringing this, not us.
Okay, so listening to Jasmine Crockett lecture people about small government and federalism is definitely amusing. And it seems like Democrats really only do that when they are talking about, protecting criminals and illegal immigrants. And meanwhile, speaking of Democrats protecting criminals, Democrats continue to try to obstruct ICE. ICE is apparently going to launch an operation they're titling Midway Blitz, which I assume will be better defense than the Chicago Bears presented last night. Truly an awful, I'm a Bears fan, truly an awful game for the Chicago Bears, as per our usual arrangement. In any case, according to the Washington Post, the Department of Homeland Security said on Monday it has launched an immigration enforcement operation here as part of the Trump administration's effort to target sanctuary cities. Immigrant advocates say several people in heavily Hispanic communities have been detained. The agency did not provide details of the scale or duration of the undertaking in Chicago, which will be led by ICE. The announcement came after President Trump vowed for weeks his administration would send federal law enforcement officers to the city as part of an effort to crack down on crime. Now, again, ICE does have the plenary capacity to actually enforce immigration law, including inside states, because there's federal law that prevents you from being an immigrant lawbreaker. You're not supposed to come here without your visa. You're not supposed to overstay your visa. And yes, the federal government does have the power of enforcement there. Apparently, according to the Washington Post, local officials and immigrant advocates said federal immigration officers began making arrests in Chicago on Sunday and had taken at least 5 people into custody, including a well-known flower vendor and people waiting at a bus stop and on the sidewalk. The advocate said there had been an escalation in enforcement actions and reported several sightings of ICE vehicles. While this is happening, the Supreme Court did lift limits on immigration raids in LA. There had been a federal judge who had attempted to stop the president from enforcing immigration law. The Supreme Court said no. In a brief unsigned order, according to the Wall Street Journal, they granted an emergency request by the Trump administration to remove the limits while the litigation continues. Government lawyers argued that the lower court had improperly interfered with the agent's ability to conduct immigration enforcement in a high-priority metro area that harbors a large population of immigrants who are in the United States without permission. Justice Kavanaugh wrote a concurrence to explain his view. He said it was common sense that federal officers can conduct immigration checks where violations are most likely. Quote, if the person is a U.S. citizen or otherwise lawfully in the United States, that individual will be free to go after a brief encounter. The liberals on the court, of course, wrote a dissent. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, who is the second dumbest justice on the court after Ketanji Brown Jackson now, which is saying an awful lot because Sotomayor is an awful justice. She wrote, quote, we should not have to live in a country where the government can seize anyone who looks Latino, speaks Spanish, and appears to work a low-wage job. Well, I mean, that's not what's happening. I mean, they're allowed to question you, and then they will release you. That is silly. Okay? But Democrats continue to attempt to avoid the reality of immigration enforcement and pretend that this is some sort of grand scheme. It is amazing. Democrats actually have some fertile ground to go after President Trump. And they could be going after him on the economy. They could be going after him on allegations about drawdowns in foreign policy. There are a lot of areas where the Trump administration, like any administration, is vulnerable. Instead, they've chosen crime is actually not a problem, and illegal immigrants should be allowed to live freely without being bothered by ICE. Good luck with all of that. Okay, meanwhile, back to that original topic that we took up. Young people who seem to be completely unmoored from actual values. Celebrity culture has something to do with this. It really does. So, again, I only dabble my toe in celebrity culture. I don't spend a lot of time there because it is an incredibly stupid place filled with morally venal and shallow human beings. However, I am an exception. The vast majority of young people are deeply engaged in pop culture. They spend an awful lot of time on social media, and they idolize and emulate people like, for example, Sabrina Carpenter. And so the politics of people like Sabrina Carpenter actually matter. While I think the VMAs is tired and old and basically wore out its welcome during the Britney Spears days 20 years ago, it's still going on. And it's still promoting the same sort of libertinism and social leftism that it was 20 years ago. So Sabrina Carpenter, who is basically playing a version of Madonna in the early 80s, these sort of weirdly virginal and yet over-sexualized pop star. Well, she did a performance of the VMAs that was complete with a full-on drag queen / transgender protest, like with signs and everything. And this is the sort of stuff that, again, inculcates in young people a belief that the sole purpose of life is both political protest and the sexual feelings inside of you and the vicissitudes thereof on a day-to-day level, which is why something like 1/4 of all of Generation Z now identifies as LGBTQ plus minus divided by sign, even though the revealed preference in terms of actual sexual behavior is significantly different from that. Anyway, here is Sabrina Carpenter doing her ridiculous routine. So for those who can't see, it is a bunch of drag queens, and then Sabrina Carpenter is about to emerge on stage from a manhole. and she's about to sing what would have been, basically a very blasé pop song from 1998. That's a lot of drag queens with very, very large shoulders behind Sabrina Carpenter, and they're all dancing together, of course. And this is, of course, a match to her song Tears. The entire music video for that is also drag queens in a haunted house. So, it's a lot of this. It's a lot of this. And eventually they bring out protest signs and the whole thing. So there's some of that at the VMAs. You also had the VMAs do a gay Romeo and Juliet. So I guess it's just Romeo and Romeo, starring a Corey Fogelmanis, I suppose is the name of this human. Again, I'm not with it, as the kids say. So here, if this is your type of thing, then you must be a member of Gen Z. So here we have dead dude, and then we have the singer who is also playing Romeo and being sad that his boyfriend just committed suicide. So well, if this is wow, how truly pathetic. Bad high school drama and poor vocals together all at once. Oh, my goodness. Well, I guess this is what Gen Z is going. I can't imagine why they are coming out all screwed up. The good news is they have both therapy and gay people to help them, according to Ariana Grande, who seems to have fallen off the wagon. I mean, honestly, it's very sad. She's incredibly talented. And here she is explaining how happy she is because she has both extensive therapy and also gay people.
Max and Ilya, I loved making this album with you more than anything in the entire world. It was life-changing. Thank you for championing me as a songwriter and producer as well. I love you so much. And thank you to my therapists and gay people. I love you.
Thank you to my therapist and gay people. I love you. This seems like a deeply happy and fulfilled human being, as most of our celebrities are. And that's why we should take all of our moral and political guidance from them. Speaking of which, apparently some 1,200 members of the Hollywood community have decided that they're not going to work with Jews anymore, effectively speaking. I mean, that's essentially what they're saying. There's a list of signatories, figures from across the film and TV world, including Oscar, BAFTA, Emmy, and Palme d'Or winners, have signed a pledge saying they will refuse to work with all Israeli institutions and companies that are, quote, implicated in genocide and apartheid against the Palestinian people. Amazing, because every single one of these people, if dropped into the Gaza Strip, would be dead within 24 hours. But not because of Israel, like because of Hamas, and because of the Palestinian people who are extraordinarily politically radicalized. The list of signatories, which includes filmmakers like Yorgos Lanthimos, I think one of the most overrated filmmakers of our time, Anna DuVernay, who's also up for that title, Adam McKay, who may also be up for that title, Boots Riley, Emma Seligman, Joshua Oppenheimer, and Mike Leigh, and actors including Emma Stone, Olivia Colman, Ayo Edebiri, Lily Gladstone, Mark Ruffalo, of course, Mark Ruffalo, Peter Sarsgaard, and a bunch of other people. They all signed this pledge statement. It states that examples of complicity include, quote, whitewashing or justifying genocide and apartheid and or partnering with the government committing them. This would include the Jerusalem Film Festival, the Haifa International Film Festival, Dak Aviv, and TLV Fest. Now, what's hilarious about all of this is, number one, these people are brutally ignorant of everything, including basic human morality. In a fight between Israel and Hamas, there is no question that one of those sides is significantly closer to, say, the freedom-loving values of the West than the other side. But it's not about that. It's about the oppressor-oppressed matrix, and all of these people believe themselves to be marginalized artists from a system that is cruel. Again, scavengers living high on the hog in American and Western societies while tearing away at the very fabric of the principles that undergird those societies by siding with the world's worst human beings in the form of Hamas. It is worth noting, by the way, that the Israeli film industry is not famously right-wing, just to point that out. So the mass declaration was inspired by Filmmakers United Against Apartheid, which was founded by Jonathan Demme, Martin Scorsese, and 100 other prominent filmmakers in 1987 to demand that the U.S. film industry refuse to distribute films in apartheid South Africa. Again, the goal of attempting to slur Israel as an apartheid state, despite the fact that there are Arab parties that sit in Knesset, despite the fact there are Arab judges on the Supreme Court, despite the fact that Arab citizens of Israel have equal rights with Israeli citizens of Israel. It's insane. perfectly predictable from the same group of people who believe that Kamala Harris is an absolute political genius and that the height of human fulfillment is transgender identification. Well, the Democratic Party has also taken up the call. Zohran Mamdani has now said that he wants to divest the New York City pension investments from everything related to Israel. I think he should go further. I think that Zohran Mamdani should personally stop using any technology that's spurred from Israel or from Jews, period. I think that he should stop using any medical treatment that came from Israel or from Jews, period. He should really go all the way, like whole hog. He should only, in fact, take products and services that were produced by colonized people in the third world. And then we can see how that all goes for him and for the city of New York. Here he was yesterday explaining this to Al Sharpton, a man who once suggested in New York City that people who were Jewish should pin their yarmulke back and come to his house after an Orthodox Jew accidentally hit a black kid with his car, spurring or at least contributing to the Crown Heights riots of 1991 that ended with the murder of an Orthodox Jew, Yankel Rosenbaum. Somehow that guy has a show on MSNBC. So here is old Zohran Mamdani with new Zohran Mamdani.
Has your personal views on the phrase of global intifada changed since you've been running for mayor? Do you understand those that see it in a more threatening way than saying, I'm just not going to police other people's language?
Yes, they have. And you know, when we won the primary election, I said on that stage that I know that millions of New Yorkers care deeply about what happens in Israel and Palestine, and I'm one of those New Yorkers. And I commit to reaching even further to understand disagreement, to wrestle with the complexities of those differing viewpoints, because what this city deserves is a mayor that looks not only to represent the close to 600,000 New Yorkers that voted for me, but rather the 8.5 million people that call this city home.
So now he says that he is moving away from, he won't personally, he won't personally say globalizing. I don't believe him for one single solitary second. Of course, he believes everything he believed a moment ago. And this is the game that Democrats are increasingly going to play, is they are going to humor every single radical anti-Israel idea while claiming that they're not actually anti-Israel. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, another liar from the state of New York, she's doing this as well. She says, don't worry, 9 out of 10 senators are actually pro-Israel. Well, that's weird because about half of the Democratic senators in the Senate voted for an arms embargo on Israel in the middle of a war. So I don't believe you, Kirsten Gillibrand. I think you are a liar.
I will use my expertise to give them this perspective so they at least know how they're being received. Because 9 times out of 10, they aren't trying to be anti-Semitic or even trying to be anti-Israel. They think they're just fighting for human rights, or they're fighting for peace, or they're fighting for some other aim. But the words they often choose to use are very hurtful and harmful and are undermining.
She's a little hard to hear, which actually makes her more palatable. But she's basically making the case it doesn't matter how anti-Israel Democrats appear to be. They actually are pro-Israel. Well, you can either believe her or your lying eyes. Those are your choices. Meanwhile, the scavengers continue to march over in the UK. The UK police have arrested over 800 people at a pro-Palestinian demonstration. By the way, they were not just at a pro-Palestinian demonstration. They were specifically showing support for a group called Palestine Action, which was designated a terrorist organization in July in Great Britain. More than 1,000 people showed up with the sign saying, I support Palestine Action. And many of them were arrested. The reason that they, of course, were actually listed this way is because, quote, they had orchestrated a nationwide campaign of direct criminal action against businesses and key national infrastructure and defense firms. The government cited an incident in the Thales military manufacturing factory in Glasgow in 2022, in which 5 protesters scaled the factory's roof and caused what officials said was more than 1 million pounds of damage using pyrotechnics and smoke bombs. They also attacked Israeli defense firm Elbit Systems in Bristol and one of the company's subsidiaries in Kent. So Britain arrested a bunch of people, but don't worry, the left will attempt to free them and then tell us about how this is the height of Western freedom, is people who hate the West being able to do property damage. Meanwhile, the French government, which has come out in favor of a Palestinian state because the reward that you get for the worst terror attack on Jews since World War II is a state, according to the French morality. I'm sorry, contradiction in terms. The French version of morality. Then the reward for a gigantic terror assault is a state, obviously. Well, the French government is about to fall again. And I would suggest, honestly, at this point for France, a 2-state solution. They need a 2-state solution. I think that there ought to be a second state of France. There can be the state of France for people who actually like the country and are patriotic about it. And then there can be a state of France that is just for the people who wish to import third worlders and their ideology that hates the West, actually. That seems like a good solution. Why not? Territorial integrity for the pro-Hamas advocates in France. According to the Wall Street Journal, President Emmanuel Macron has lost his second government in less than a year, a measure of how France is caught in a spiral of political dysfunction that is draining its public finances. A no-confidence motion against the government of Prime Minister François Bayrou won the support of 364 lawmakers in the 577-seat National Assembly, forcing him to tender his resignation. The fall of Bayrou, a centrist ally of Macron, after less than 9 months in office, deepens the country's paralysis at a time when investors are questioning whether France can muster the political will to rein in its ballooning budget deficit. The answer there, of course, is no, beyond which France has basically fallen victim to what Michelle Houellebecq suggested was a version of submission. And so, good luck to France, which has essentially signed its own death warrant by importing legitimately millions of people who hate its values. And we'll see how it works out for them. Well, meanwhile, in other news, the media continue to make a big deal out of Jeffrey Epstein non-revelations, which is kind of amazing. So apparently, the Epstein birthday letter with Donald Trump's signature has been revealed. And whoa, boy, amazing. Remember, we were told that basically Donald Trump drew a sexy silhouette. I got to say, he's not good at drawing silhouettes. If this is a thing that President Trump drew, then it is not, in fact, a sexy silhouette. He says that it is fake and that is not, in fact, his signature. I will say that the Donald there does look like Donald Trump's signature. That doesn't mean that Donald Trump actually wrote this thing. It also, I will say that if Donald Trump drew this silhouette, I feel like that is not properly proportioned for Donald Trump and his tastes. Let's just say it's underwhelming in a variety of ways. According to the Wall Street Journal, lawyers for Epstein's estate have given Congress a copy of the birthday book put together for the financier's 50th birthday, which includes a letter with President Trump's signature he has said doesn't exist. On Monday, House Oversight Committee members confirmed they received a copy of that birthday book, and it had a crude joke about a woman and an outline of a naked woman. And the signature was a squiggly Donald below the waist mimicking pubic hair. I think honestly that's kind of a stretch looking at this. But okay. And really and people are like, oh no, Donald Trump lied about you. You mean Donald Trump fibbed that he didn't write a note that he wrote that really doesn't say anything? I can't believe it. You mean he denied a thing? Wow. Shock me more, world. I don't know how I'm going to take this shock. My heart just can't take it. The attempt to continue to whip up hysteria about Donald Trump's involvement with Jeffrey Epstein is just, at this point, it's an op. Seriously. Make a claim. Make a claim. Like a serious, well-substantiated claim. Not a sort of speculative what if or just asking questions. Like a serious, well evidenced claim about the president. If you want to say it out loud. Don't hide behind your pathetic question asking. Just make the accusation and then we'll see where we stand. Alrighty, folks, coming up, we'll jump into the vaunted Ben Shapiro Show mailbag. The show continues for our members right now. Remember, in order to watch, you have to be a member. If you're not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro. Check out for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us.